Chapter 1 Part 4. Anthony didn't speak. He propelled Angela through the glittering throng with terrifying urgency, his grip on her wrist an unbreakable shackle. Polite smiles froze on faces as they passed, murmurs rising in their wake. He ignored them all, cutting a desperate path towards a discreet side exit marked staff only. A security guard stepped forward, hand raised, but Anthony fixed him with a stare so sharp, so utterly devoid of its usual polished charm, that the man faltered and stepped aside. The heavy door slammed shut behind them, plunging them into a stark, concrete service corridor. The roar of the symphony was replaced by the hum of industrial HVAC and the frantic echo of their footsteps. Cold, sterile air replaced the scent of perfume and champagne. Anthony released her wrist only when they reached a metal staircase leading down. "Down," he ordered, his voice tight with suppressed panic.
"Now."
Angela stumbled on the narrow steps, her borrowed heels treacherous on the metal treads. Anthony caught her elbow roughly, steadying her without breaking stride. He was breathing hard, his usually pale face flushed, eyes wide and darting. The polished prints had shattered, revealing raw, jagged terror beneath. They emerged into a cavernous underground parking garage. The air was thick with the smell of exhaust and damp concrete. Anthony scanned the rows of luxury vehicles, then strode towards a long, black limousine idling near a service elevator. Its tinted windows looked like obsidian. The rear door swung open as they approached. Anthony practically shoved Angela inside before diving in after her, slamming the door. "Go, Martin."
"Now."
His voice cracked. The limousine peeled away with a soft electric whine, tires squealing faintly on the polished concrete. The sudden silence inside the plush cabin was deafening. Angela pressed herself against the cool leather, heart pounding against her ribs. Anthony sat hunched forward, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. His shoulders trembled. "What happened?" Angela demanded, her voice shaky. "Who knows?" "Knows what?" He didn't answer immediately. He dragged his hands down his face, leaving red marks on his pale skin. When he finally looked up, his eyes were haunted, the blue depths churning like the stormy strait. "Eleanor," he rasped. She has eyes everywhere. Cameras in the hallways. Audio feeds routed to her security detail. She heard Liam. He swallowed hard. She heard him talk about the charity case. About me slumming it. Cold dread washed over Angela. "So? It's the story you sold." "It's not the story," Anthony hissed, leaning closer. The panic in his eyes was corrosive. "It's the leverage. Liam implied. He implied I was vulnerable. That I needed you. That this wasn't just control." He spat the word. "Eleanor doesn't tolerate weakness. Especially mine. Especially perceived dependence on." He gestured vaguely at Angela. "The harbor's end dress, the borrowed heels. On something she considers a liability." The limousine glided through the rainy streets, the city lights smearing into watery streaks on the tinted windows. Angela felt the walls of the gilded cage closing in, thicker and colder than before. "So, what does she do? Ground you? Cut your allowance?" Anthony let out a sound that was almost a sob, choked back instantly. "You don't understand." He looked at her, truly looked at her, his mask obliterated by raw fear. "She erases liabilities, Angela. She buries them. Financially. Socially. Sometimes." He trailed off, the unspoken word hanging heavy in the air.
"Literally."
"She made my brother disappear for 2 years. Sent him to some wellness facility in Switzerland after one tabloid photo with the wrong girl. He came back hollow." He shuddered. "She'll do worse to you. To your mother. She'll find a way to claw back that grant, tie it up in lawsuits, bankrupt you slowly. Or worse. She'll make sure Megan's recommendations vanish permanently. She'll destroy everything you care about to prove I don't need anything. Especially not you." The sheer, naked terror in his voice was more convincing than any threat. Angela believed him. The elegant monster in the silver silk dress suddenly seemed capable of anything. The $3,850 grant, her mother's fragile hope, Megan's future. It was all sand slipping through her fingers. "What do we do?" Angela whispered, the fight draining out of her, replaced by icy resignation. Before Anthony could answer, the partition between the front and rear cabins slid down silently. Not Martin, the driver. Eleanor Moretti sat in the jump seat, her silver gown immaculate, her expression glacial. She held a slim, silver phone loosely in one hand. The limousine's interior lights glinted off her perfectly coiffed hair. "Anthony," she said, her voice devoid of inflection. "How dramatic." Her icy gaze shifted to Angela. "Miss Mitchell, I trust the caviar was satisfactory." Angela couldn't speak. The air crackled with lethal calm. Eleanor didn't wait for a reply. She tapped her phone screen. A moment later, Angela's own phone buzzed violently in her borrowed clutch. With trembling hands, Angela pulled it out. A notification flashed. NW Oncology Associates. Payment received. $3,850. "Thank you. Consider the grant a retainer," Eleanor stated, her eyes fixed on Angela. "For services rendered." She turned her gaze fully on Anthony, who had shrunk back into the leather, looking younger and more terrified than Angela had ever imagined possible. "Your little performance tonight was adequate, Anthony. The optics were salvageable. Until your panic attack and undignified flight." She sighed, a sound like dry leaves skittering on stone. "Emotional incontinence is a luxury we cannot afford. It invites speculation. Exploitation." "Mother, Anthony began, his voice strangled. Silence. The word cracked like a whip. Eleanor leaned forward slightly, her presence filling the luxurious space like a spreading frost. "The arrangement continues. But the parameters change. This harbors and dalliance." She flicked a dismissive glance at Angela. "Ceases to be a tool of damage control. It becomes a merger." Anthony went very still. "A merger?" "A public demonstration of Moretti's strength and assimilation," Eleanor clarified, her voice chillingly reasonable. "You will be seen to elevate her, tutor her, refine her, mold the rough harbor's end or into something approximating acceptable. You will make this," she gestured vaguely at Angela, "appear to be your conscious choice. Your project. Your triumph. Not a necessity. Never a weakness." Her glacial eyes locked onto Anthony's. "You will convince everyone, Anthony. Especially yourself. And you," she turned the full force of her gaze onto Angela. "You will comply. Utterly. You will learn. You will adapt. You will become whatever he requires you to be in public. You will erase every trace of Harbor's End from your posture, your speech, your essence. In return, your mother lives. Your friend thrives. Fail." She didn't need to finish. The unspoken consequence hung heavier than any words. The limousine slowed. They were back on the outskirts of Harbor's End, near the salt box. Angela stared at Eleanor, the monstrous elegance, the absolute certainty of her power. She thought of her mother's exhausted face, of Megan's desperate hope. She thought of the torn sketch, the fleeting connection at Split Rock, the terrifying vulnerability in Anthony's eyes just moments ago. All of it crushed under Eleanor's diamond heel. "Get out," Eleanor commanded, her voice flat. "Anthony will collect you tomorrow for your first refinement session. 10 a.m. Be ready." The door unlocked with a soft click. Angela fumbled for the handle, desperate to escape the suffocating chill. As she stepped out into the rain-slicked street, the cold night air hitting her like a slap, she heard Anthony's voice, barely a whisper, raw with a despair that mirrored her own. "Help me." Then the door slammed shut. The black limousine slid away into the rainy darkness, leaving Angela standing alone under the flickering street lamp, the taste of beluga caviar and utter defeat like ashes in her mouth. The cage wasn't just gilded anymore. It had bars of ice, forged by Eleanor Moretti. And she'd just agreed to live inside it.